Hello, Packers fans, and welcome into our Packers news sort of post game. This is our Packers news post game. It's going to be really late last night, about 1 a.m. before we were ready, so we knew you were all going to be in bed, or if you were smart, you were going to be in bed. So we decided to spend your lunch break with you today. Ryan, welcome into our Lambeau Field post game.
It was very, very late. Well, we leave the stadium like 3 a.m.
3 a.m.
Might be the latest this season. That
Yeah,
might be a new record for
yeah,
us.
that one was definitely up there. But yeah, so we thank you all for joining us today. Of course, like we said, it was a late game, primetime game, Sunday night game. Packers defeated the Minnesota Vikings 37-10. It was the first time they have beat the Vikings in their past three outings. But more importantly, locked up the number one seed in the NFC playoff. Thanks also to a little bit of help from the Arizona Cardinals yesterday, who defeated the Dallas Cowboys. Ryan, I know you focused on that in your story, which people can read on PackersNews.com and in the paper, in Green Bay Press Gazette and Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. But just kind of take us a little bit through what it means to have locked up that number one seed and how important that is.
It doesn't. It means a lot. I mean, there's only one first round bye. It's the number one seed. The Packers have it. That's obviously one less game on the way to the Super Bowl that you got to win.
Mm-hmm.
Home field advantage is obviously important. They feel it's more important this year than it was a year ago because, one, even with everything going on with COVID-19, the stadiums are still at full capacity. So that's a difference, having a full crowd behind you. But also, it was 29 degrees for the NFC Championship game last year. If you live in Green Bay and it's 29 degrees, you're doing cartwheels in January. That's
Right.
nice. Like it's balmy. It's almost flip flop weather, right? They
For
hope
you.
that it's a lot colder this year, that they get a better break. But there was so much euphoria last year because Aaron Rodgers has been saying for years how after losing three NFC Championship games on the road, how bad he wanted to get one at home. They finally get it. And there was a sense of, well, they've got this at home now. They're just going to cruise right on to the Super Bowl, and it didn't happen. So I think that the overriding sense last night wasn't so much what was gained, but what wasn't gained. Right? They've got the one seed, they've got the home field, the first round bye. They don't have the Super Bowl. There's still a lot of work to be done, and they're going to keep their foot on the gas.
If you have any questions, go ahead and drop them in the comments. We're going to get to them here in just a few minutes. But Ryan, you and I were talking as we kind of watched some of these other games come in last night that all of the teams that we really felt like were standing in their way have struggled the past couple of weeks. Granted, the Packers haven't played the toughest schedule, but they've done what they needed to do. They've handled business. And then you have the Bucks, barely squeaking out a win versus the Jets. And Dallas really only showing up against Washington and then not being able to do it at home against the Cardinals. The Cardinals have been up and down. The Rams have been up and down. Does it feel like their path is getting easier and easier as each week goes by?
There's not a 2019 49ers or a 2020 Bucks in this NFC field. So that is a lot different than the past couple of years. We were talking about this last night, Kassidy, when we were kind of wrapping up, and I've covered 4 NFC Championship games. 3 of those, I thought the Packers were going to the Super Bowl. That 2014, they're 5 minutes away. I literally turned to my colleague at the time, Weston Hawkowitz, now at Packers.com, and said, "Well, buddy, looks like we're covering the Super Bowl." When Morgan Burnett had that slide. 2016, they were so hot coming out of that Dallas divisional game. I remember being on the phone with a good friend and saying, this team's going to the Super Bowl. I was convinced. Last year, remember being asked on the air, on the radio, WSSP, is this the year? And they're going to the Super Bowl. So 3 of those 4, I thought they were going to Super Bowl. So it's kind of, at some point, they've just got to show up for one of these games. They've got all the ingredients that you need. They've got a Super Bowl roster. They got the quarterback. They got the surrounding supporting cast. They got the coaching. What we don't know is whether they're going to show up, and that's everything at this point.
And like you said, it felt like a couple of years ago probably they had the number one seed and felt like they could just cruise. Now, we even described it when we were talking about it. It almost feels like a monkey on their back. Like, well, you can get to the NFC Championship game, but can you win it? And that's Aaron Rodgers knows that that's part of his legacy right now. Don't you feel like that he can get there, but he can't win it?
1-5 as a starter in NFC Championship games. That's going to be remembered. That's going to be
Right.
mentioned. Now, if you have a chance now to get his fourth MVP, which puts him in the rarest of company. Only 6 players in NFL history have 3 MVPs. So if Aaron Rodgers gets over that hurdle into number 4, it's only him and Peyton Manning at 5. That's it. That's spectacular company, obviously. And you're able to get to another Super Bowl, win it, multiple Super Bowls, 4 MVPs. You're putting yourself in the
Rarefied air.
upper. Yeah, I mean, Tom Brady's the GOAT, right? I mean, the dude's got a 10-part series right now of each Super Bowl season. It's ridiculous.
Right.
So Tom Brady's the GOAT, but we're talking about like sub GOAT, right? Like
You're in the room.
below that, that's
You're in the same
special.
pen.
Yeah.
The same goat pen. Good question from Todd that's going to probably dominate much of this week. I have a feeling starters will play a half next week. How about you? It's kind of what we agreed on first half.
I agree. I like the way that our colleague Spoon, Tom Silverstein, put it, where they need to treat it kind of like a preseason game. They got to get a little bit of work. I think what's really important, Aaron Rodgers was very optimistic about his pinky toe last night. He said it was the best that it felt. It was the first time that he did not have a pain injection before going into a game. So that's big. He said that he thought about practicing last Thursday. He only practiced last Friday last week, but he thought about practicing Thursday as well. He thinks there's a chance that he could practice both days, Thursday and Friday this week. So there was a time where Aaron Rodgers was looking at this first-round bye and maybe clinching the 1 seed early as extra rest, additional rest. It's one of those things now where he doesn't feel like he needs it. He feels like he doesn't feel like he needs to play, but he can play. Again, he's got an MVP to go for. Devontae Adams got some records to go for. He broke his own single season catch record last night. He's got 117, 2 more than last year. But he's 22 yards from surpassing Jordy Nelson's 1,519 receiving yards from 2014. So he's got some things to go for. You're gonna see these guys for at least a little bit in Detroit.
Yeah, they know they need the stat stuff a little bit. A couple of good questions coming in. Let's kind of go through them. This was an interesting one because Aaron Rodgers himself addressed this last night. Michael asked, I know it's 1 week at a time, but getting Alexander and D-Bach back has to be key. Heidi asked as well, Bakhtiari back for the playoffs. Aaron Rodgers gave us the most information yet that we have heard about these guys possibly coming back. Kind of take us a little bit through what he said.
He was pretty optimistic. He was pretty hopeful. We talked about it on the podcast last night. I guess I'm skeptical because there's so much that's got to change from where they're at right now to where they've got to go. Jair Alexander is the only one that's been practicing, and now he's on the reserve COVID-19 list. So, Josh Myers not practicing. David Bakhtiari is in the middle of the second setback, hasn't been practicing for 2 weeks. So Darius Smith hasn't practiced since it was warm out, since it was it's week 2. So I don't know. I guess I kind of take the Matt LaFleur stance. He was asked, Tom Silverstein asked him last night, and he said that there was a time this season where he was really hopeful and optimistic, like, yeah, it's going to happen. And yet here they are still, right? It's still a limbo. And until then, they're going to roll with what they got. And I guess that's the right sense. Like, so much has got to change. But with that said, Aaron Rodgers was very optimistic and frankly candid about the chances of the Packers getting reinforcements. And if they do, you're talking about the team with the best record in the NFL, a team that clinched the 1 seed a week early, which is awfully impressive considering they were wiped off the field in their opener against New Orleans. I mean, amazing turnaround. Adding not just Pro Bowl talent, but Pro Bowl talent at some of the game's most important positions, left tackle, edge rusher, corner. Awfully huge boost that would be.
Yeah, and Rodgers sort of said that. He was like, look at what we've done and look at what we can be. We could be a pretty special team in the playoffs, and they can be. Michael also points out, see what happens when we actually run the ball. We get results. They ran for 172 yards last night. Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon between them ran for 139. which doesn't sound like, I mean, that's a respectable run game, but they did that while also throwing for 288 yards. They put up 481 total, the most that they've put up all season. It was an extremely balanced attack, and they were still able to pick up that many yards on the ground. Did we kind of see the against still a good Mike Zimmer defense? Did we kind of see what you need to see from a run game, if that makes sense? Like, it felt like to me that was the epitome of how you want to use Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon. That was they're different backs, and they were both used perfectly last night. How encouraging is that heading into this final slate?
It was a good balance. What Aaron Jones had like 8 or 9 carries and averaged
9.5 yards per carry.
You'll take that.
Yeah.
Pretty decent. Not bad. Yeah, they complement each other really well, but they're both really good on their own too. You're talking about a pair of running backs that have exceeded 1,000 yards from scrimmage in the same season. Only the 4th time in team history that has happened. Cassidy, when's the last time that happened? Did I hear that
1980.
Right? 1980. I thought, yeah. So
40 years.
I wasn't born yet. You know, we were not even in the thought at that.
Not even a twinkle.
It's been a minute. So that's on a team that's got an MVP quarterback and the best receiver on the planet. The fact that they've got those two guys should not be forgotten. That is a hell of a strength in their backfield, to be able to have two guys that complement each other so well, and two guys that are just they're bona fide talents in their own right. That's where, you know, it's not the triplets either. It's the quadruplets, right? Because AJ Dillon, he's been doing work. He's got 5 touchdown rushes this season, 2 in the air, 7 touchdowns total, 1,000 yards from scrimmage. He on the offensive side is kind of building into a star, the way that Rashawn Gary on the defensive side is building into a star with 9.5 sacks this season. Both those guys, I think, have been the most improved on their side of the ball.
Yeah. One of the reasons that they've been successful is they've had some good protection up front. And Levi asked, how does Goot continue to find solid offensive tackle vet depth in a league that doesn't have it? Where is he finding these guys? He mentions, Veldheer, Wagner, and Kelly every year.
Packers have always been really good at identifying offensive line talent. That goes back to Ted Thompson. They've always been uncanny. You know what helps with that, though, is not a coincidence. What have they had for 30 years now? Hall of Fame quarterback play.
Yeah.
Nothing makes an offensive line look better than Hall of Fame quarterback play. A guy that can read and diagnose the defense before he even gets the snap and know where he's going to go with the ball based on the look. A guy that doesn't get fooled. You saw it in Kansas City, right, with Jordan Love, a guy that can't do that yet. We don't know if he ever will, but he can't do that yet. How much of a difference quarterback play makes on the offensive line when you are not able to pick up the blitz. So, yeah, I mean, quarterback has a lot to do with that.
Right. We've heard Aaron Rodgers talk about, like, I think when he was saying Dennis Kelly got in there for the first game, he went away from him for the rest of the game or ran plays specifically to help him. Like you said, not every quarterback can do that. Daniel says this week is going to be the Love versus Boyle Bowl. I feel like Aaron Rodgers would like to watch that.
Let's do it. Let's go. I'm here for that.
He's talked about Tim Boyle being his guy before.
I would be absolutely down for just Jordan Love, Tim Boyle all game. Let's just duke it out. Let's just see what happens.
Viewing.
You're going to see Aaron Rodgers a bit, but you're going to see Jordan Love versus Tim Boyle, the laser show, the love child. It's going to be great.
Jordan Love showed some wheels last night too.
He did. How about that 3rd and 10 pickup? I got to go back and actually watch him, because he was playing at a time in a game where my deadline was getting very real. So my head's kind of more in my computer than on the field. But I did see the 3rd and 10 pickup.
You addressed this a minute ago, but let's just bring it back up. Alan asked, what is going on with Za'Darius?
Flip a coin. I don't know. I don't know if they know. Aaron Rodgers said that he was he's optimistic that all 4 of those guys can come back. There's a real chance a real possibility for all four of those guys. Zadarius Smith doesn't need a lot of practice time. Go back, he had 4 practices all of camp, 1 in pads, only 1 practice in pads, played 18 snaps in Jacksonville, which was hot in September. Cassidy, a little thing about that. Against the Saints, and he had the best pass rush of the game. That bogus roughing the passer penalty that on Jameis Winston that caused the interception. So I don't think he needs a lot of practice. With that said, he hasn't done anything since week 2. He's coming off back surgery, so kind of a significant thing.
Right. Levi with another good question. Is Moore the return man for the rest of the season? He certainly made a case for himself last night.
I don't see why not. I mean,
he's handled it better than anyone else.
Yeah, Amari Rodgers ain't it. David Moore looked good enough. Matt LaFleur was asked after the game about it. He said, he was non-committal, but he certainly didn't say no. So I would expect that you're going to see David Moore.
He essentially said every position is open. And if that's the case, then it's an open competition, and David Moore did a lot to help himself last night. I thought it was funny that Aaron Rodgers said, I met David Moore just before he went out for his first return. He's been in town for 30 seconds. And then he went out and gave them one of the best special teams performances they've had all year.
Can you imagine that from David Moore's perspective? I'm about to go out for this, first return. Oh, that's Aaron. Oh, hi, Aaron. It's kind of an interesting moment.
Having to introduce yourself, how's town been? Did you get settled in? So we'll see what kind of happens there and if he sticks around even when Amari Rodgers comes back onto the roster. Todd with a good point. Bakhtiari needs to be game ready. That's not a position you can just step into. He'll be rusty.
Yes.
So with that being said, do you expect to maybe see him versus Detroit a little bit just in hopes of getting him some snaps?
I completely agree with you. David Bakhtiari needs to get some series, some possessions under his belt. That is a position, I just said about Zadarius Smith. Doesn't need to practice a whole lot because he's a pass rush. Just throw him out there, pin his ears back, and let him get the quarterback. David Bakhtiari, it's a lot more to it as a left tackle. And so, yeah, I mean, for him to play at his peak, for him to play like David Bakhtiari, it's hard to think that he's just going to trot out there after not playing for an entire year and do that without some snaps under his belt. So we'll see, because it's hard to see him playing in Detroit because he hasn't practiced in a couple weeks. He's in the middle of the second setback from the torn ACL. So not just going to throw him out there either. So we'll see if he's able to practice this week. If that is enough, I don't think he's not getting the full game. He's not going to go out there for the full game. But some practice snaps, kind of what it is because this game doesn't count, right? But so some snaps in a game that they don't need to win would go a long way.
Gary asked, are the Packers over the cap with paying bonuses for sacks for Preston Smith and Rashawn Gary? If my understanding is correct, bonuses do not count against your cap, correct?
Right. Yeah. That doesn't count toward the cap, so they're fine there. I don't know. Rashawn Preston Smith is certainly going to hit some of those escalators. I don't know what they are off the top of my head, but Rashawn Gary, 9.5 sacks. I mentioned him. What Preston Smith has done should not be overlooked. He had 2 sacks in his first 8 games this season, and he's turned it on since. He's got 7 sacks in his past 7 games. He's put last year's slump behind him. 9 sacks on the season. It's awfully impressive for a guy who took a pay cut. Right. Who that's a gut check time for you in your career when you've got to take a pay cut this offseason, and he's responded to it. I mean, he's gone out there and he's hit his incentives, and it's Rashawn Gary said that they're trying to prove that they've got the best edge rushing duo in the league, and that's big talk. Maybe they're not there, but considering they haven't had Zadarius Smith all year, it's remarkable how good their edge rush has been with 9.5 sacks on one side and 9 on the other.
Right. And Brian points out the run defense was much better last night. A lot of hats to the ball. Granted, they knew that was their game plan with Kirk Cousins out, that all they really needed to do was, they could put 8 in the box if they wanted to, but they did it. and they stopped Dalvin Cook. He had 12 carries for 13 yards. That's impressive no matter which way you cut it, no matter who's at quarterback, right?
It is. It's good work. It means less than how bad it would be if he went off with Sean Mannion at quarterback. I mean, no question, it was a huge, and that's why I tweeted last week how the Packers basically clinched the home field advantage when Kirk Cousins went on COVID-19 reserve list, and everyone was like, "Well, they've still got Dalvin Cook." Yes, and a backup quarterback. I mean, the Packers know they're going to want to run the ball and not air it out with Sean Mannion. I think the Vikings, early in the game, they tried to get Sean Mannion on some rollouts, get him some easy completions because they knew that they had to present the threat of a passing game, and it worked for like a nanosecond. And then Sean Mannion played like Sean Mannion, and then they turned into Remember the Titans and not giving up 1 yard the rest of the night, right? So.
Was it you that tweeted that GIF, or was
that was me?
I knew I saw it.
I suck at GIFs too. That was like a high point in my life.
I don't want him to gain another yard.
I am not a great GIFer.
A GIFer. I heard it in his voice too, and I like cracked up because I was saying the line was not another yard. And it, you always think about that movie being Denzel Washington, but people forget that coach in that moment is when he uttered the line like, you make sure they never forget the night they played. Or how does he say it? You make sure they remember
for the rest of their life the night they played the Titans. Oh, it's such a great movie.
Great movie. If you ever get a chance to go to Alexandria, Virginia, and visit the high school, you should go check out a high school football game at that school.
Have you done that? So I've been to DC more times than I can count, but I've stayed in Alexandria. But I've never gone to the field. Like it's really, I don't know.
I've actually not been to a game there, but I've been to like see it and see the history. But I haven't been to a game. But one of my best friends covered that area. She was a sports anchor in that area, so she used to cover that high school. And she said it was special every time she went to a game there because you just kind of knew, kind of like how sometimes we feel walking into Lambeau. You just know you're in a really historic place, and so yeah. Go check out a game there. We should do that next time we go to DC for the Ravens game or Washington game.
I'm down.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go through some more questions here. Y'all are getting in a ton of questions today. I love it. Y'all are making up for us not being here last night. Tripp says that if it's Love and Boyle, the final score is 3-0. Not sure who wins. I'd be okay for that. We call that a defensive performance.
Look at I call that a quick game.
A quick game.
That's what I like. I got everything for me, so that's good with me.
Pack One says that if they can get Jair Bakhtiari back, it's all they may need for a run. Do you agree?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. I'm on board with that. You got a second-team All-Pro corner, first-team All-Pro left tackle. Here's the thing, though, with that. What do they do in the secondary if they get Jair Alexander back? I think that's a really intriguing question because now you want your best on the field, and you've got your top three corners are all perimeter guys. Jair Alexander shut down half the field in coverage. He's a perimeter guy. Rasul Douglas doesn't play a slot. He's a perimeter guy. Eric Stokes, a rookie. You don't really want to put that slot on his plate as a young player, especially as well as he's playing on the perimeter. He's a perimeter guy. I think that'll be very, very interesting if that happens. Cassidy, you're on mute. You're on mute.
I can't believe it's rookie Zoom mistake. But yeah, it's a good problem to have. You can never have too many corners. Let's go down through here. Levi put this in. We kind of talked about this last night with Tampa Bay losing Godwin and AB and Jair coming back. I feel like the Packers are against. Sorry, I'm reading this wrong.
It was a late night. I'm like half awake here. You got to understand. All right. When you get out of the stadium at 3 a.m., you don't just go to bed. Like
Right.
we're working, we're wired. Like I had
work
like,
when you come home, and then you need to wind down.
I had like 60 cups of Mellow Yellow last night. Like I'm bouncing off the stadium walls. I come home like I don't just go to bed. Like I'm like I cannot sleep. So like I don't know about you know what, I got a text from Kassidy like 4:30. I was still about what time to do this today. I was still awake when I got the text, but I didn't have like the energy like that. Like I can't. So like yeah, we're having a hard time reading today, but I
I
appreciate you doing
understand.
it all.
5 a.m. 5 a.m.
Jeez,
That's what time I went to bed. So
you beat me. You beat me.
yeah, I had to come back and edit the podcast and get that up. So if you haven't checked out the new episode of the Green 19 podcast yet, don't leave. Don't do it right now, but do it later today.
Not yet.
Anyways,
Yeah.
let's get back to Levi's question. We kind of talked about it earlier. You know, Tampa Bay doesn't look like the world beaters that they were. And it's not even just that they got caught in some weird games. They've legitimately lost their playmakers as the Packers are getting theirs back.
Potentially. Yeah. You know, those two teams going in the opposite direction. The Bucks still have that defensive front. So from a matchup standpoint, if David Bakhtiari doesn't come back, that could be a tough matchup. But they got to show up. But they've got every reason to think that they can make a Super Bowl run. No question about it.
Yeah. Todd says great push from the offensive line last night. Twice they had a goal to go and got A.J. Dillon in by pushing the pile. I mean, that's got to be encouraging to see.
Well, A.J. Dillon also got A.J. Dillon in by running over fools. Like,
yeah.
Who was –
But when he got the 4-yard touchdown earlier in that drive, that was a 7-play drive, and he got 5 plays on it. Earlier in the drive, they had faced 3rd and short. And the touchdown, yes, I'll give more credit to A.J. Dillon there on the touchdown. But when they faced 3rd and short earlier in that drive, that came purely from the offensive line pushing him down the field.
Yeah. Yeah. I just like people running over people. Like, I don't know. I'm all for that kind of violence. So A.J. Dillon provides it in spades.
Yes, he does. Okay. Let's see. Let me go down through here. I don't mean to keep going to Levi, but I like this question because I know you want to talk about this. Is Rodgers a lock for MVP now?
Boy, lock's a big word, Levi. Lock's a big word. He's the front runner. He's the favorite. I don't know if I can say lock. That's just he's something short of a lock, but I think he's going to win it. I believe he will. So I'm going to say something short of a lock, but yeah, he's got 35 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. He's going to have another 4,000-yard season, leading the team with the best record in the NFL. And let's not forget that he's only lost 2 games as a starter, one of those by a field goal on the road against a division opponent, which happens. 111 passer rating, best in the NFL. And his closest competition is a running back. They never win this award. So maybe not a lock, but he's going to win. So I don't know. That's kind of a double-edged sword there, but it's an awfully good chance.
Right. Here's a one we can ponder on. Pack says he has a feeling that we get Dallas in the divisional round. Do you think Dallas makes it to the divisional round and Mike McCartney comes back to Lambeau?
I honestly haven't looked at the matchup possibilities yet. Mm-hmm. It does seem like that this whole season has seemed like there's a collision course of Aaron Rodgers and Mike McCarthy at Lambeau Field. So whatever round that happens, it does have that feel, but I haven't looked at the potential matchups yet.
Yeah. Christopher asked, okay, let's say you keep David Moore. What do you do with Amari Rodgers?
Inactive? You keep him inactive. I mean, that's – I don't know what to tell you.
Sorry. I thought
Cassidy's back.
Kassidy is back. Sorry. Yeah, I mean, do you use him more as a receiver, but you don't really need him? That's a crowded group if you're trying to shoehorn him in there at receiver. So, speaking of receiver, Timmy asked, if Devontae Adams gets the franchise tag, is Rasul Douglas and Aaron Rodgers the first players to get contract extensions?
It's tough. I've had some conversations about this with Rasul Douglas uh, regarding Rasul Douglas in the past week, and it's a tough one because, of course, they're going to want to keep him. I mean, look at the way he's played, right? But he's also earned himself a lot of money, and a lot of money the Packers don't have, especially on the cap for 2022. So it's tough to say, Cass. I don't know what they're going to do there.
Yeah, those are decisions we don't get paid to make
No,
because they are.
fortunately, I'm good with that.
Yeah, they are tough ones. Anyways, so many good questions, guys, but we're going to wrap up. We know y'all need to get back to work. Go back to work. We're going to get back to work here as well. We've got Matt LaFleur coming up here in about an hour and a half. So stay tuned to PackersNews.com for full coverage of that and the rest of the week as the Packers get ready to take on the Detroit Lions. Thanks.